It's the Alex Audience. So you wait months and months for any videos, and then two come along at once. Today's video, the reason I'm just pulling my computer up there is because somebody, what do you call himself? Hold on, I can tell you. LED Boots, LED Boots, LED Boots, on the comments of my last video said, on the subject of books, Alex, will you be doing another roundup of the books you've read recently? So, yes, I will. Now, the last one I did was in April, and I did I just started reading Square Wave by Mark De Silva. So, it seems like a good place to pick up from there, isn't it? I'd read It Can't Happen Here by Lewis Sinclair, which was exceedingly nerve-wracking, because it seemed very much like Trump the novel. Started Square Wave, hated it, absolutely awful. Got maybe 10 pages into it before I stopped. There wasn't a single character I was interested in. It was, yeah. I never used to leave books unfinished, but now I read so much. I mean, I've read over 70 books this year that I just can't be bothered with wasting time on a book that I'm not enjoying. So anyway, let's go straight forward. The next thing I read was, and I've got my Goodreads thing in front of me here. There may be a way of sharing this. I don't know. I'll see if I can. Anyway, The Last Question by Isaac Asimov, just a short story. Very much enjoyed it. Not much to say about it, really. It reminded me a little bit of the whole thing with Deep Thought in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, answering the question and then coming up with Let There Be Light at the end. Scorch Atlas by Blake Butler. Very peculiar book. I was expecting far more of it. It's an odd tale about the end of the world, which didn't really do it for me. It was very oddly written. Next up was The Prefect by Alistair Reynolds. Probably my favourite so far of the books set in the Revelation space universe. Mind you, having said that, there's one a bit further on that I've really enjoyed as well. So I'm going to have to cough again. So yeah, I really liked The Prefect. I don't really want to spoil anything about it, but set kind of before the events of the other novels, so the point where the Glitter Band is still the Glitter Band instead of the Rust Belt. Okay, then next up was I, Partridge, We Need to Talk About Alan. I listened to the audiobook of this one. Fantastic. Brilliantly read by Steve Coogan in character as Alan Partridge. And I've got lined up now, once I finish the next book I'm listening to, I'm going to be listening to Nomad, his new book, which I think is going to be great. Next one then was Michael R. Underwood, There Will Always Be a Max, which is a little short story. Set in a kind of world where the Mad Max character is a kind of archetype and there'll always be a version of him to save people. I had no idea when I read it that it was actually a spin-off from a series. I liked the whole conceit of it. It was very entertaining. The Rapture of the Nerds, Tales of the Singularity, Post-Humanity and Awkward Social Situations by Cory Doctorow and Charles Stross. Awkward. Lacked the charm I thought that Accelerando had. Lacked the excitement that Charles Stross manages in his Laundry series, in his best sci-fi. Wasn't terrible, wasn't great. Then I started reading The Long Earth, the Terry Pratchett and what's his name? Stephen Baxter. So really, I read The Long Earth, The Long War together. Very much enjoyed them. I felt that they were kind of slightly slim on story. Certainly The Long War was. I mean, the title gives the impression that it's going to be something more, but it isn't. Then between that, because I was reading and listening to things at the same time, there was Merlin's Gun by Alistair Reynolds, just a little short story. Nothing particularly brilliant, nothing terrible about it. It just doesn't stick in the mind, really. The Long Mars, then, by Pratchett and Baxter. All right. Again, it gave the impression there was going to be more to it. And I think that was the sense I got from the whole series, really, of the Long Earth series. There was more. The whole thing. It felt like it didn't really ever go anywhere. It had this really nice idea at the core of it, but then didn't take it where it could have gone, in my opinion. unlike Proxima and Ultima by Stephen Baxter, which I'll come to in a bit, which have got a similar premise, but have handled it far better, in my opinion. Okay, Thousandth Night by Alistair Reynolds, which was a story that was... House of Suns was a story kind of spun out of that, so it shares some commonality with it. But it's obviously kind of an earlier version of the story. The Long Utopia was, again, the same problem with the others in that series. Not much else to add about that. Ian Banks and Ken MacLeod, poems. It's poems. Some of them are good, some of them are just... Poetry is an odd one for me. I sometimes enjoy it. I don't enjoy it read to me. It's something that I think, for me, is better absorbed on your own. Performance poetry is something that I can very much leave. Poems is all right, but it's not a culture novel. Nanotecture, the tiny built things. Rebecca Roke, a book about small buildings. Now on to something that I really enjoyed. 40 Signs of Rain by Kim Stanley Robinson. Now, I've been really enjoying Kim Stanley Robinson's books this year. I've gone through a lot of them. And the Science in the Capital series, which I think has subsequently been republished as one volume called Green Earth, is just fantastic. It's something that it didn't appeal to me on paper, but it really has sucked me into 3 books, 40 Signs of Rain, 50 Degrees Below, and I think it was 60 Days and Counting, are all fantastic. Just a beautifully written series of books with characters that are, in the same way as he always manages to do, characters that are relatable and very well written. How to Make a Home, The School of Life, Book 7 by Edward Hollis. I bought that at the... what's it called? The something collection in London. It's a gallery. I bought the book there. Really interesting. I've been looking to try and work out what makes a home, and it was interesting to read that then. David Suarez, Influx. Very much enjoyed that. Kind of the whole idea of a secret organisation that has got high-tech stuff and is stopping other people getting it. That was good. Utopia for Realists, the case for a universal basic income, open borders and a 15-hour work week by Rutger Bregman. That was excellent. An eye-opener. I'd recommend you read it, especially if you're a colossal capitalism fan, because it will just go to show how wrong you are about that. And then obviously 50 Degrees Below was the next thing I read. Then The Long Cosmos, which is the finale of the Long Earth series. It just was. Short story next was Julia Rochester, Bringing Stan In. A sweet little story about a local fisherman, and I don't really want to tell you more about that. It's worth digging out that. Then Antonia Honeywell, The Time Being. Now, I didn't realise at the time when I heard this was a freebie given away by Audible. I didn't realise at the time this was part of a series, so I listened to this, and it made me want to then go with the book that follows it up, which I'll come back to in a minute. Then there was Diaspora by Greg Egan. I really enjoyed Shield's Ladder by Greg Egan, and this was just more of the same, brilliantly bizarre. I loved the whole thing. I very much enjoy Greg Egan stuff. Revenger by Alistair Reynolds I've talked about already. Hopefully it's the beginning of a series, though the impression I'm getting is that it isn't. Very kind of unusual in that it managed to make steampunk something that I could bear, because normally I can't stand it. Then there was 60 Days and Counting, which is the end of the Science in the Capital series. Then Totem Poles by Rudy Rucker. I don't remember anything about it. Charles Stross, The Nightmare Stacks. Again, a change of main character from Charles Stross for the Laundry series. Very much enjoyed it. The whole premise is kind of a bunch of really it's elves. Elves turn up in Leeds. That's any more would ruin it for you. The Dead Astronaut by J.G. Ballard. Short but bleak. Kim Stanley Robinson, 2312. Now, some criticism I'd read of this was saying that it was too similar to the Mars trilogy in the way it was approached, but I actually found it, though it shares some little bits, like it almost seems like they could almost exist in the same universe, but they don't quite. And it's far more based on a small number of people than the kind of more sprawling stories he's written with large casts. Thoroughly enjoyable. Six Semper, Six Semper, Six Semper by Douglas F. Warwick. A very odd little story about a time traveller living in the head of Abraham Lincoln. Then The Ship, Antonio Honeywell, which is, this ship is the one that I then went to grab because of, for the time being. The Ship is a story about a world that's gone to crap, and the main character's father buys a ship, and he takes a number of people away on the ship, and things ensue. It's quite an interesting, it's going to sound wanky, this is quite an interesting meditation on the nature of cults and charismatic leaders. Graham Norton, Holding. Now, I've joined NetGalley this year, and so I'm getting, books that before they come out, which is quite nice. Holding by Graham Norton was one of them. Pooh, I got about 2 pages into it, couldn't care less. I mean, it started quite well. It kind of pulled me in, and I was interested in the main character. And just when I felt, okay, it's going to go off and do something good, the story then completely switched to somebody else. And I lost interest completely at that point. It might be brilliant. Other people might love it. I have no idea. I didn't finish it. Joe Haldeman, The Forever War. I decided to listen to that because people who had... Well, a lot of people have said that John Scalzi's Old Man's War was heavily influenced by it. So it's quite interesting to see how that all went on. The whole notion of a war going on that doesn't really make sense, and nobody can actually work out what side's going on, or why it's even happening. Oops. And then there was Beyond the Aquila Rift, another short story by Alistair Reynolds. Fairly inconsequential. Not much else to say about that. So Long Lollipops. Now that was another freebie from Audible by Sarah Fleming. Sarah Lyons Fleming, maybe? Sarah Lyons Fleming Lyons? Maybe it's... I don't know. It's Sarah Lyons Fleming, possibly, I'm going to go with. Now, this was actually a kind of further on, middling part of a story, which I'm not doing very well with this mic, am I? I didn't realise that this was part of a story, so it kind of spoiled part of another book, but it didn't really matter because it was told from a different perspective. Basically, it's part of the Until the End of the World series by Sarah Lyons Fleming. It is The Walking Dead with a different name. That's all it is, really, but thoroughly enjoyable nonetheless. I don't know whether it sits under adult fiction or, I don't know, some people have said it's meant to be like a vampire romantic novel. Not vampire, zombie romantic novel. I didn't really get that at all. I just enjoyed it because it was a fairly well written zombie story. So Long Lollipops is pretty good. Blake Crouch, Dark Matter. Really enjoyed this. The whole notion of multiple universes and the many worlds theory, where just making different decisions branches off lots of different outcomes, and all those outcomes are equally real. To say anything more about that would be to ruin it. I believe it has been optioned for a TV show. If it does happen, then that's going to be really good. So then, Until the End of the World, which is the first part of the Until the End of the World series, the Sarah Lyons Fleming, like I said, Walking Dead. Troika by Alistair Reynolds, again, another short story, fairly inconsequential. Then And After and All the Stars in the Sky were the next 2 books I read. They're also part of the Until the End of the World trilogy. Perfectly enjoyable, serviceable zombie fare. So I stuck with zombies for the next one, and at a recommendation of one of my colleagues at work, Hayley, she recommended The Girl with All the Gifts by Emma Carey. Emma Carey, yeah. Really good. I've not seen the film, but hopefully the film will be as good as the book was. Some of it was filmed in Birmingham, apparently, so that'll be interesting. The Girl with All the Gifts, a nice change on the way that zombie stories are put together. Then The Medusa Chronicles by Stephen Baxter. I believe it's a follow-up to... it's Stephen Baxter and Alistair Reynolds, actually, and I believe it's a kind of a sequel to a... oh my God, why can't I think of his name? Arthur C. Clarke. It's the sequel to an Arthur C. Clarke novel. Stands perfectly well on its own. An enjoyable kind of rip-roaring adventure kind of thing with an old school kind of ha-ha hero. The Four-Dimensional Human, Ways of Being in the Digital World by Lawrence Scott. Again, an interesting non-fiction thing about how do we exist in a world where we extend into the digital. and that was a lot to think about in that. I can recommend it. The First 15 Lives of Harry August by Claire North. Very good. Another, well, what can I say? The basic premise is character lives his life, dies, and comes back at the very beginning of his life again, but remembering all the things that have happened from the previous version, and finds out that he's not the only person like that. Anything more than that would spoil it. It is very, very good. Go and read it. Rara Avis, which is a book published by Alcu Records in Spain. Joe Gilmore and a few other people involved in that. It comes with a cassette. I haven't actually had a chance to listen to the cassette yet because I've not unpacked a cassette player. The book is beautifully presented. It's all about artificial birdsong and what we think of and how we experience birdsong. It's a little 40-page book. I like it, really nicely presented. I can't really explain it without showing it you, and I haven't got it to hand. Proxima by Stephen Baxter. Now, Proxima is very the notion of it is it's got certain similarities with the Long Earth. In that there's different realities and a kind of an all-powerful AI involved. Very much enjoyed it. The audiobook version I listened to, rather oddly narrated. I can't remember what the name of the guy is that narrated it though. Then there's Galactic North by Alistair Reynolds. Now, I said earlier that The Prefect was one of my favourite Revelation Space novels. Now, Galactic North's really good. It's a series of short stories set in that universe, and it spans from well before everything happened with, I think it's Neville Clavane being involved with the Conjoiners, right through to the far, 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 far future. That was excellent. It's kind of individual stories, but it really works very, very well and fills in a lot of gaps. And possibly one of my favourite. Then I started reading Bombs Away by Harry Turtledove. Alternate history. America uses nuclear weapons during the Korean War. Just awful. All the characters were just terrible. Well, they were just terrible. They were just cliched, most unenjoyable. And I'm currently reading, at the moment, I'm now onto Ultima, which is the follow-up to Proxima. About halfway through that. Really enjoying that so far. That's actually, I prefer it to Proxima. It kind of really builds on that. And then I've mentioned it before, The Promise of the Child by Tom Toner. The more I get into that book, the further I get in, and I'm now about just coming up to halfway through. It really is up there in world building terms. It's up there with the best of Ian Banks, and I can't really say much more about it than that because I don't know how the story's going to finish. But it's certainly, so far, it's got the slow build of the best of Ian Banks, and like I said before in the previous video about it, it does have that kind of slightly surreal edge to it that things like Fearsome Engine or Matter had, and so it's recommended. Yeah, looking forward to his second book. I'm hoping to get a copy of that before it's published. I full disclosure, I said this before, Tom approached me to read it, and I've been telling him what I thought of it. I don't know why. I'm very flattered that he asked me to read it. He's a proper published writer and stuff, but it looks like I'll possibly be able to get a preview copy of the next one, so that'll be good. Anyway, so that's where I'm up to at the moment. I've got other things coming up, but yeah, this is in reaction to somebody asking me to do this. So Lead Boots is the person you have to thank if you are finding this interminable. Anyway, thanks for watching.